Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's edition, Monday's edition of Alaska Weather, 20th day of December, 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, Haisley's weather graphic showing the Arctic coast in yellow there. That's a winter weather advisory that's out until midnight tonight. Winds gusting 45 miles an hour with a couple inches of new snow, creating visibility is down to a quarter mile or less in blowing snow. And again, that's out until midnight tonight. The winds subside and conditions improve. Also, a winter weather advisory out for tonight for the Yukon Flats area for snow and blowing snow. And winter storm warning out, let's see, until, or for all night tonight, winter storm warning out Fairbanks area, Tanana, along the Alaska Range for heavy snow, anywhere from 4 to 8 inches snowfall in those areas. And again, that's for the entire night tonight, and that should definitely be tapering off toward morning, and just some snow showers scattered around during the day tomorrow, except over toward the eastern border. Copper River Basin until midnight tonight, winter weather advisory out for several inches of snow. And for the western Kenai Peninsula, Anchorage up into the Manuska Valley, that's out until 9 p.m. And then the snow should become just flurries at that time or sooner, and probably end by morning. And then down to the south, Panhandle got red shaded area there. That's a heavy snow warning. Juneau area, inside water locations, all the way down to Dixon Entrance for heavy snow tonight into tomorrow. And that'll be shifting, mostly focusing on the southern Panhandle during the day tomorrow with low pressure off the south coast. Colder, drier air will start to pour in from the north through Lincoln Island, Glacier Bay. And at 6:59 a.m. tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, we'll have the winter solstice marking the beginning of winter. So the first full day of winter will be on December 22nd, and then the days start gradually getting longer. And satellite imagery showing surge of moisture going through actually across central and southern Alaska, kind of moving off to the east there in the north areas, but hanging up. A couple of bands, one over the Copper River Basin, another one over the west central interior today. With the snow, pretty good snowfall amounts there, Kuskokwim Valley up along the western Alaska Range into the interior, anywhere from 4 to 8 inches falling. Some of that mixed in with freezing rain at times, a little bit warmer air aloft sliding in as well on that southwest flow. Another mass there gathering over the Aleutians with a warm front that's farther to the south. Otherwise, we've got moisture over the Panhandle moving in, heaviest in the north, and that'll be shifting southward during the night tonight. And rolling this one more time, you can see the low center tracking into the Yukon Delta coast, weakening as it pulls in there. On the chart today, actually a weak low moving into the Copper River Basin, and that's just a trough at the surface that was coming into the Yukon Delta coast, actually extending up into the Kobuk Valley with areas of snow there, and then that cuts off just to the west, St. Lawrence Island, ending, clearing out. Bering Sea, high pressure, light winds there, but increasing moisture, rainfall, and eventually winds late today over the Aleutians, head of that warm front. And moisture not yet into the Panhandle, just some variable clouds moving through, or increasing clouds there, with Copper River Basin seeing some snow and starting to taper off back over Cook Inlet there, but continuing up in the Tanana Valley, Kuskokwim Valley interior areas. And moving on to the forecast for tonight, see that warm front brings actual storm force winds up to the western Aleutians tonight, and gale force winds over just about all the remainder of the Aleutian chain. Maybe small craft advisories around Alaska Island, but definitely rain, heavy at times, and mild temperatures. Moisture pushes up towards St. George Island late tonight. Could be in the form of snow, at least to start. As high pressure shifts in along the coastline there and ridges north-northeastward. Another trough starts to increase the wind and snow and blowing snow on the western Arctic coast late in the day as that approaches, or for tonight, late tonight. And low pressure drifts eastward there, forms actually just south of Yakutat. Warm front pushes moisture into the panhandle for the snow, heavy snow warnings tonight, and then that shifts southward. Colder air starts to drain in, definitely drier air, and eventually colder air into the Lynn Canal Glacier Bay area. And then snow will start to taper off around the Juneau-Douglas area later or during the day tomorrow and be heaviest down toward the southern areas. And wind, rain push into the Pribilof Islands and cover just about all the Aleutians, heaviest there from about Adak eastward to the warm front there on the Alaska Peninsula. And moving on to Wednesday, snow and blowing snow, Seward Peninsula into the lower Yukon River Valley areas. A chance of snow advances into the central interior, but it'll be light. Otherwise, colder over the Copper River Basin and clear and cold over the Panhandle up into the northern interior. Just a risk of some snow flurries on the western Arctic coast. And another round of gale force winds for the western Aleutians. Lows tonight, staying above zero, single numbers. Kuskokwim Valley, Susitna, Matanuska Valley, Copper River Basin, teens to the south, and then mid-20s along the North Gulf Coast. Lower teens, northern Panhandle, mid-20s south, around freezing for Sitka and Kodiak, and upper teens, lower 20s, Bristol Bay. Bristol Bay highs, upper 20s, lower mid-teens for the northern Kuskokwim Valley, near 20 for the Susitna Valley, otherwise in the 20s to near 30 down to the south, around 11 for Gulkana, 39 Middleton Island, upper 20s northern Panhandle to mid-30s in the south. And for the lows the following morning, back below zero, Copper River Basin, Susitna Valley, northern Kuskokwim Valley, near 30 for Kodiak Island, 8 for the northern Panhandle to 20s to the south and along the coast. Highs staying below zero in the Copper River Basin, 10 to 15 south central Alaska, milder down toward Homer and Seward, mid-20s there to upper 30s around Kodiak. And for the highs, or the lows Tuesday morning, below zero, northern interior out to the Arctic coast, single numbers, central interior, highs 10 to 15 over the central interior, below zero out to the Arctic coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
We've got some marginal VFR, western central Arctic coast, and also the eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, pretty good VFR from the North Slope across the Brooks Range down to the Yukon River. Marginal VFR in the central upper Tanana Valley, maybe some IFR there around Chena Ridge, and then IFR, eastern Alaska Range, say Northway Tok, down across Nabezna, all the way to Yakutat, marginal VFR Cordova, and a big area of IFR over the Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, and Nunivak Island, right on up into the southern central Kuskokwim Valley. IFR spreading over all of the Aleutians and into most of the Panhandle. And for the afternoon, we've got widespread IFR out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians into the western Alaska Peninsula. Also, Bristol Bay, Togiak Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, Nunivak Island to just north of St. Matthew Island. VFR, though, St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, much of the central interior, Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, all of the southeast interior, good VFR, Gulf of Alaska, northern Panhandle VFR, IFR, southern Panhandle, areas of IFR there along the Brooks Range, otherwise marginal VFR, northern Koyukuk, Kobuk Valleys on out to the Arctic coast. That dissipates on by Wednesday morning, shifts eastward a little bit there. Still some IFR there possible in the White Mountains, northeast of Fairbanks, otherwise marginal VFR for the 40-mile country upper Tanana Valley, and marginal VFR, eastern North Slope, Arctic coast, good VFR, central interior, and from northwest to southeast there across Cook Inlet. Marginal VFR starting to spread into Kodiak Island. IFR pushing well into the southwest interior, breaking out to VFR on Chitka-Kiska Island, VFR for the Gulf of Alaska and the Panhandle. In the afternoon, that holds for those areas with a VFR, and increasing marginal VFR, south central Alaska, especially the Cook Inlet area, Kenai Peninsula, with some IFR right on its heels, covering all of the southwest interior, Seward Peninsula, northern Bering Sea, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula. But widespread VFR, central Aleutians, pushing eastward to Unmak Island, northward to the Pribilofs Wednesday afternoon. Passes Anatuvik and Antigan, occasional IFR at some point during the day tomorrow, pretty likely for both passes on either approach. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, especially late morning and through the afternoon to evening, good VFR flying conditions for the entire Alaska range coming up tomorrow. Might be iffy for a start to the day, but definitely VFR for most of the day for both Windy and Isabel. And Mentesta, same forecast, good VFR tomorrow afternoon. Tanita, VFR. And Portage also VFR, Chilcoot and White, VFR in the forecast. For the freezing levels, kind of a gradient there across southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians Alaska Peninsula, running anywhere from 2,000 to 8,000 feet, and then right off the southeast coast there at the surface, north of the Pribilofs, south of Bristol Bay, and near or just off the North Gulf Coast, just off the southeast coast. That's for tomorrow morning. And icing, considerable moderate rime or mixed icing, probably of the rime variety there for the southern panhandle. Same thing there for the Pribilofs across central Bering Sea. Otherwise, lighter icing, just isolated moderate for the central Aleutians, and elevated threat of some potential mixed icing possible for the Arctic coast north slope. Looking at the jet stream, good south-southwest flow coming into the western Aleutians and Bering Sea up and over the ridge there south of the Alaska Peninsula. 155, 175 knot winds cutting from the west and then northwest, turning more northerly into the Gulf of Alaska there. The cold air to the east and north of the jetmax there. Cold upper low just east of the Panhandle. And at 9,000 feet, higher pressure over the Russian Far East, kind of ridging into the northern Bering Sea. So northwest winds, 65 to 70 knots there across the northern interior, diminish over the southern part of the state there before they pick back up south of the Gulf of Alaska. And the strongest winds to the west and south of the Panhandle, southwest up to 75 knots into Adak and Atka, turn westerly at about 55 there, just southwest of Nunivak Island and the Pribilofs. 3,000 feet, strongest winds out in the Bering Sea there, 45 to 75 knots with the main low center well back to the west. And westerlies 45 knots through the central interior, and then probably along the Arctic coast, north slope as well, north 55 off the Panhandle. Turbulence, moderate chop, the Aleutians, western Arctic coast, northern southeast coast.
Here at the end of the Earth, it still feels like a place for raw exploration and adventure. It's vast in all directions and ground zero for some of the biggest questions we have about the climate. But when we decided to make a series about the frozen places on Earth, we knew there would be one hurdle we would need to jump over first. What is the cryosphere?
The what?
Ooh.
I have no idea.
While I'm aware of the cryosphere, I don't actually know what it is.
It has something to do with ice. All right, that's all I got.
How do you get people acquainted with the cryosphere when most of us don't even know what it is?
Hey, so here we are in Washington, D.C., standing on the roof of NASA headquarters. That's the Capitol building right behind me. And what headquarters does is kind of serve as the focal point to connect the dots.
That's Dr. Tom Wagner, NASA's cryospheric program scientist at headquarters. In short, Tom is responsible for making sure NASA knows what the current status of the cryosphere is.
The cryosphere is everything from the snow that falls by your house to the icy reaches of the Himalayas, to the big ice sheets of Antarctica all the way at the South Pole, and also the frozen ground of the Arctic, and even some of that frozen ground that's currently under the ocean.
If you had to break it down, you'd have a mix of sea ice, snow cover, permafrost, ice sheets, and glaciers.
Right now, our best predictions are that sea levels will rise anywhere from 1 to 3 feet within the next 100 years. 3 feet of sea level rise has the potential to displace about 100 million people, which is a lot of people that need to find new homes.
Our current reality places us at a near tipping point, and the cryosphere is playing a huge part in that delicate balance.
So one of the things people don't know about NASA is that we study the Earth, and we've been doing that since NASA's inception back in the 1950s. And we study the frozen part of the Earth in a variety of ways.
Missions like SNOWX, Airborne Snow Observatory, Oceans Melting Greenland, Operation Icebridge, Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, and countless other labs and individual researchers stand at the forefront of monitoring the cryosphere. But this year was a particularly big year.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Grace Follow-On, continuing the legacy of the Grace mission of tracking the movement of water across our planet.
2 state-of-the-art satellite missions are being launched in a single year as part of a major attempt to understand Earth's frozen places. Our scientists are answering hard questions, sharing stories from the field, and giving their best predictions for what we can expect of a warming world. We're taking you with us as we follow NASA explorers on their journey to the frozen ends of the Earth as they study our rapidly changing world from satellites, planes, and boots on the ground.
What we can do really well from orbit is we can tell when a surface of land is covered in snow. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
What we think of snow depends a lot on where it falls. If you live in the eastern US, maybe it's fun. Or maybe it's just a pain.
But if you live in parts of the world where they depend on the water that's in the snow for a large fraction of their total water that they use for drinking, for agriculture, for industry, or for hydropower, the snow is a very important natural resource. For example, in the western part of the United States, 80 to 90% of their renewable water comes from snow.
Snow is one part of the cryosphere that many of us have actually encountered before, but it also plays a critical role in regulating the Earth's climate. Through decades of remote sensing, NASA has kept a close eye on the ebb and flow of snow cover.
We now have a 52-year record of snow cover in the Northern Hemisphere, and we can see changes in the extent of snow cover over the time period, particularly in the last few decades, where we can see that the snow cover has been retreating. It's been melting a lot earlier in the springtime.
The extent is relatively easy to do, and it has been done over the years. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
That tricky part is known as the snow-water equivalent, or how much water would actually be in a layer of snow if it melted. NASA and its partners have taken to the air to help solve this elusive mystery. First, there's the Airborne Snow Observatory, or ASO, a small plane outfitted with a couple of instruments, one of which measures snow depth using LiDAR. LiDAR measures distance using light from lasers. Since 2014, ASO has flown over basins in California and Colorado, taking before and after looks at snow depth. Scientists subtract the snow-free summer data from the snow-on winter data to get an idea of the snow depth. There's no single way to measure all types of snow across the globe, and so NASA's other airborne campaign, SNOWX, is testing different combinations of sensors. This winter, SNOWX will test a new instrument, the Snow-Water Equivalent Synthetic Aperture Radar and Radiometer, or SWISAR.
SWISAR consists of 2 main components, one of them being the radar and the second one being the radiometer.
So with the radar providing the depth of the snow and the radiometer providing the density of the snow, we could put those 2 things together and get the snow water equivalent Here in the chamber, we're going to measure different radiation patterns at our different frequencies and do some full system testing in this chamber. This chamber kind of enables us to isolate various types of radiation and interference. And in about a month, we're going to take the instrument, mount it on a Twin Otter in the Grand Mesa in Colorado, and we're going to fly it over the Grand Mesa and take various different measurements. This is what we call our engineering flight.
Making sure the sensors are calibrated is key in order to face the challenges nature will throw at them.
Half of the area that gets covered by snow every winter contains trees and forest. And the trees make it difficult for the sensors to see the snow that's underneath the trees, so it makes it difficult for us to measure how much snow there is. After the snow's had a chance to sit on the ground for a while, it gets denser and denser and denser over time, and it changes. Which is another reason why snow is very challenging to remotely sense. It doesn't stay the same. It's constantly changing. One of the things that we often do in the field is go dig what we call a snow pit. We literally dig a pit in the snow so we can see all the different layers. The layering is very important.
All this digging is part of ground truthing SnowX, a way of matching up what the airborne instruments see and what is actually sitting on the surface. The ultimate goal of SnowX is to figure out what the best combination of instruments would be for a future satellite mission in order to get a global picture of snow.
We need to know how much snow is in a snowpack, because if we have too much snow and the snow melts too fast, then you can get flooding. And if you don't have enough snow, or if the snow melts too early, that can lead to a longer wildfire season, a more intense drought, and we need to know these things for water resource planning.
After we had a record that was about 15, 20 years long, we started noticing that the extent of the ice in the Arctic was getting smaller over time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Back looking at the marine forecast, coastal waters of the Panhandle. On the south coast, gale warnings, west-southwest winds 30 to 40 knots, and gale warnings on the north coast for 35-knot winds with 10 to 12-foot seas. Lincoln Glacier Bay, northern inner channel. It's pretty windy tomorrow. North 45 knots sustained with 8-foot seas. Stevens Passage, north winds 25 knots, and southeast 25 for Clarence Strait. And for the outlook on Wednesday, winds come down, but actually become north, 30, 35 knots for the south coast for gale warnings there, mainly along the central coast there. And then lighter winds as you head north, dropping off to east at 15 there, up toward Yakutat. Lincoln Glacier Bay, still gale force northerlies going on, a little lighter than what you'll see tomorrow at 35 knots. North 30 for Stevens Passage, northwest 20 for Clarence Strait. Cook Inlet, northwest to southwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Gales for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, northwest 45 knots, seas 15 to 20 feet. And gale warnings for the North Gulf Coast, northwest 40 to 45 knots. Prince William Sound, small craft advisories, northwest 30 knots, 6-foot seas. Look for gale force gusts as high as 50 knots, or gusts to 50, that'd be storm force gusts of 50 knots. Northern Cook Inlet on Wednesday, northeast breeze at 10 knots, but small craft advisories to Southern Cook Inlet, north at 25. Gale warnings continue for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, west-northwest winds 45 knots, northwest 30 knots, western North Gulf Coast. Winds come down to 15 knots from the north for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, gale warnings tomorrow, northwest winds 35 to 40 knots, seas as high as 12 feet. Sitkan Castle Cape, small craft advisories, northwest 30 knots with 12-foot seas. Look for a northwest wind at 15 knots for Bristol Bay. Alaska Peninsula, southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. And moving on to Wednesday, Alaska Peninsula, west-southwest 25 knots, southwest 25 for small craft advisories for Bristol Bay, and 30 to 40 knot west winds for Kodiak Island with seas up to 10 feet. Fox Islands, let's start out with Unalaska Island, east-southeast 20 to 30 knots tomorrow, and south to southeast 30 to 35 knots for Unmak Island. Adak and Atka, gale warnings south to southeast 35 to 40 knots. Southeast 35 knots on Chitka Island. Storm warnings, Kiska to Shimia. Southeast winds coming up to 50 knots with seas around 20 feet. And for Wednesday, gale warnings from Shimia to Chitka Island for south winds 40 knots, seas around 20 feet. Small craft advisories, Adak and Atka, south winds 25 to 30 knots. And Unmak Island, south winds 25 knots. And small craft advisories for Unalaska Island, southwest 25 to 30 knots, 10 to 14 foot seas. For the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, pretty light winds out of the northeast tomorrow at 10 knots. Pribilof Islands, southeast at 30 knots, east 25 knots. St. Matthew Island, Yukon Delta coast, east winds at 20 knots. Southwest winds 20 knots, St. Lawrence Island and Norton Sound. Outlook for Wednesday, brisk wind advisories for Norton Sound, northeast 30 knots, gale warnings, east 45 knots for St. Lawrence Island. Southwest coast, southwest winds 30 knots, seas and ice-free waters up to 10 feet, and 40 knot southwest winds for the northern Bering Sea. Pribilof, southwest at 30. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, brisk wind advisories, west winds 25 to 30 knots, brisk wind advisories for the central coast, southwest 25, and brisk wind advisories actually for the western Arctic coast all the way down to Wales for west winds at 30 knots. And for the day on Wednesday, northeast 25 from Wales to Cape Thompson, and Cape Thompson, Cape Beaufort north of 25, otherwise brisk wind advisories. For the central and western Arctic coast, 25 to 30 knot winds, and then the extreme eastern Beaufort Sea coast, Kaktovik, Barter Island, Demarcation Point, west winds 35 knots. That's good for a gale warning. For tonight, look for snow on the eastern Arctic coast, and snow and wind start to increase with an approaching trough on the western Arctic coast tonight. Otherwise, a trough will keep lingering snow showers mainly along the Alaska Range, mountainous terrain of the Kenai Peninsula, and Copper River Basin. Light snow continues, slowly ending from west to east. And winter storm warnings out for the Panhandle, Juneau, inside waters for heavy snow tonight. And wind and warmer temperatures push into the southern Bering Sea and Aleutians with that warm front out west. High pressure dries it out along the west coast. And tomorrow everything starts to shift eastward. Couple of weak troughs keep snow showers or light snow going, except look for snow and blowing snow on the western Arctic coast. Snow over the southern panhandle becoming colder in the north. Cold and dry for the southeast coast on Wednesday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.